A drunken millionaire's mistake. One passionate night alters everything. To all our new subscribers, welcome to a place where love, emotions, and powerful stories come to life. And to our loyal viewers, thank you for your continued support. You are truly appreciated. May this video touch your heart, inspire your soul, and remind you of the strength within you. May your heart always be filled with love, your mind with peace, and your path with endless blessings. May every challenge you face turn into a lesson, every tear into joy, and every dream into reality. May you always be surrounded by those who cherish and uplift you. Amen. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to be part of this beautiful journey. Zayden Harrington was the kind of man people whispered about in admiration and envy. His name alone commanded power, his presence demanded respect, and his wealth made him untouchable. From the penthouse offices of Harrington Enterprises to the lavish, high-profile galas he attended, Zayden had everything a man could desire: money, influence, and the attention of the world's most elite. Yet, as he stood in the grandeur of the ballroom that night, surrounded by chandeliers dripping with crystals and the scent of aged whiskey lingering in the air, he felt something he hadn't in years: loneliness. The gala was filled with the usual crowd, women draped in designer gowns, their laughter artificial, their interests transactional, men boasting about billion-dollar deals, expensive watches flashing under the golden lights. It was a world Zayden had conquered but no longer cared for. Then, in the middle of it all, his eyes caught her. She wasn't trying to be seen, yet she was impossible to ignore. Amara Patel. She stood near the edge of the room, effortlessly elegant in a deep emerald dress that hugged her curves in a way that was sophisticated yet undeniably sensual. Her brown skin glowed under the soft lights, and her long, wavy hair cascaded over her shoulders like poetry. But it was her eyes, hazel with flecks of gold, that stole his breath. They held a quiet confidence, an intensity that could silence a room. She was unlike anyone here, and Zayden knew in that instant he had to know her. He approached her, drink in hand, as she stood near the terrace, seemingly unbothered by the extravagant event around her. "Not a fan of galas?" he asked smoothly, his deep voice laced with curiosity. Amara turned her head slightly, her gaze meeting his with quiet amusement. "Not a fan of pretense," she replied. "These events feel more like performances than gatherings." Zayden smirked. "And yet, you're here." She lifted her champagne glass with a small, knowing smile. "I was invited as a guest speaker. Unlike most people here, I don't collect wealth. I raise funds for causes that actually matter." Intrigued, Zayden chuckled. She wasn't intimidated by him. She didn't fawn over his status or try to impress him. Instead, she challenged him with nothing more than a sentence. "Impressive," he admitted. "Most people in this room wouldn't care about anything beyond their next investment." "And you?" she asked, tilting her head slightly. "What do you care about?" Mr. Harrington, for the first time in years, he was at a loss for words. He had spent his life chasing success, building an empire, but standing in front of Amara, he wondered, had any of it ever truly mattered? Their conversation flowed effortlessly. What started as small talk turned into something deeper. They talked about dreams, ambition, injustice, and the burden of expectations. Amara spoke passionately about the underprivileged communities she worked with, and Zayden found himself mesmerized, not just by her beauty, but by her mind, her heart, her fire. He made her laugh, and God, her laugh was intoxicating. Rich, warm, the kind that made you want to bottle it up and keep it close. He didn't realize how much he needed to hear laughter that wasn't forced, that wasn't designed to flatter him. As the night went on, their distance became smaller. His fingertips brushed against hers when she reached for her glass. Her breath hitched slightly when he leaned in closer to whisper a joke in her ear. The chemistry between them was undeniable, electric, an unspoken promise of something neither of them had expected. Before they knew it, the night had slipped away, and the gala was nothing but a blur of forgettable faces. "Come with me," Xaden said suddenly, his voice lower, more serious. Amara raised a brow. "And where exactly are we going?" "You'll see," he replied, offering his hand. She hesitated for only a second before placing her palm against his, allowing him to lead her out of the suffocating ballroom and into the quiet city night. They walked through the empty streets, the cool air filling the space between them. Xaden had never done this before, left a gala for nothing but conversation. But with Amara, everything felt different. Under the dim glow of streetlights, she spoke about her struggles, about how people had tried to define her by her skin, her background, her place in society. "They look at me and assume things before they even hear my voice," she murmured. "Like I'm not enough for this world." Xaden stopped walking. He turned to her, his hand instinctively reaching for her face, his thumb brushing against her cheek. "You're more than enough," he said, his voice raw. "You're extraordinary." For the first time that night, Amara looked vulnerable, as if no one had ever told her that, and truly meant it. The air between them grew heavy with something deeper than attraction, something real. And when Xaden leaned in, closing the space between them, Amara didn't pull away. Their lips met in a slow, intoxicating kiss, one filled with every unspoken emotion, every unsaid promise. It wasn't just a kiss, it was the beginning of something neither of them were ready for, something that would change them forever. The city was quiet, wrapped in the stillness of the late hour, but in the penthouse suite of Xaden Harrington, the air was anything but calm. It crackled with tension. Heavy, undeniable, magnetic. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of New York at midnight, the skyline bathed in moonlight. But neither Xaden nor Amara noticed. Their world had shrunk to just the two of them. Xaden leaned against the grand piano in the corner of the suite, his eyes never leaving Amara. God, she was stunning. Her deep brown skin glowed under the dim golden lighting. Her lips were slightly parted, her breath uneven, matching his own. He had been with women before, models, heiresses, women who knew how to play the game of wealth and power. But no one had ever undone him like this. No one had ever made his pulse race just by standing in front of him. Amara took a step closer, hesitant, yet drawn to him as if something greater than them both was pulling them together. "You're staring," she murmured, a small, teasing smile playing on her lips. Xaden exhaled a quiet laugh. "Can you blame me?" His voice was rough, tinged with something raw. He had never wanted anyone the way he wanted her, but it wasn't just about desire. It was something deeper, something that scared the hell out of him. Amara tilted her head, studying him. Whatever this is, it's dangerous, Xaden." He took a slow step toward her. "Define dangerous." She swallowed hard, her resolve wavering. "You're used to a world that doesn't question your presence, a world where people like me are nothing more than an afterthought." His jaw tightened. He had seen the way people looked at her tonight, the subtle glances, the silent judgments, and it made something inside him burn. "You think I care about that?" he asked, his voice low, serious. You might not, she whispered, but your world does. Xaden reached out, his fingers gently brushing against her arm. She shivered beneath his touch, and he felt that reaction like a spark against his skin. You belong wherever you choose, he said, his voice softer now, intimate. Amara sucked in a shaky breath. I don't belong in your world, Xaden. He stepped closer until their bodies were almost touching. His hand reached up, threading into the silky waves of her hair, his thumb brushing along her jaw. Then let's create a world of our own, he murmured, and then he kissed her. The moment their lips met, the rest of the world disappeared. His kiss was slow at first, testing, savoring. But when Amara melted into him, her arms wrapping around his neck, all restraint shattered. Xaden lifted her, pressing her against the cool glass of the window, the city lights flickering behind them like a silent witness to their moment. Her fingers tangled in his hair, her nails dragging lightly down his back, and he groaned against her lips, his control slipping with every passing second. Tell me to stop, he breathed between kisses. She didn't. Instead, she whispered, Don't you dare. A slow, wicked smile spread across his lips, and just like that, they were lost. They moved through the penthouse, knocking over a half-finished glass of whiskey, the scent of expensive bourbon mixing with the intoxicating fragrance of Amara's skin. Every kiss was deep, desperate. Every touch was memorized. It was a collision of fire and silk, of two souls who had spent too long pretending they didn't need anyone. That night, need one. Hours later, long after their bodies had given in to exhaustion, they lay tangled in the sheets, their breaths slowing in unison. Amara traced small circles on Xaden's chest, staring up at the ceiling. This is insane, she murmured. Xaden smirked, his fingers trailing lazily down her spine. That's one way to describe it. She turned her head to look at him, her hazel eyes searching his. I don't do this. I don't let people in. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his expression uncharacteristically soft. Maybe it's time someone broke that rule. She exhaled a quiet laugh, shaking her head. You're trouble, Xaden Harrington. His smile widened. The worst kind. But as he pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her forehead, he knew the truth. This wasn't just passion. This was the beginning of something irreversible, and neither of them were ready for what came next. Xaden Harrington had never chased anything in his life. Women, wealth, power. Everything had always come to him effortlessly. But Amara Patel was different. She wasn't a prize to be won, a fleeting indulgence to satisfy his desires. She was a force of nature, a storm he hadn't seen coming, and now he was caught in her gravity, unable, unwilling to break free. What should have been a single, unforgettable night had turned into something more. A quiet addiction. A longing he couldn't shake, and for the first time in years, Xaden found himself wanting something money couldn't buy. Amara's heart. You're persistent, Harrington, Amara mused, arms crossed as she stood on the steps of her apartment building. Xaden smirked, leaning casually against his sleek black Aston Martin, the city lights casting a golden glow on his sharp features. I prefer determined. Amara rolled her eyes. Showing up at my workplace with coffee, sending me books you think I'll like, taking me to a jazz club just because I once mentioned I love Nina Simone. That sounds like effort, he corrected, not persistence. She sighed, shaking her head. Xaden, your world is... She gestured vaguely. A game of status and power. I don't belong in it. His smirk faded, his expression growing serious. He stepped closer, his voice low, almost vulnerable. "Who says I belong in it either?" Amara blinked, caught off guard. For all his arrogance, Xaden had never lied to her. She had expected him to tell her that their differences didn't matter, that love could overcome anything. But instead, he was admitting something raw, something real. He didn't feel like he fit into his own world either, and that terrified her more than anything. She resisted at first, told herself she wouldn't fall for his charming smiles and expensive gestures. But then there were the moments that caught her off guard, when he showed up at the community center where she volunteered, rolling up his sleeves and helping fix broken bookshelves, despite clearly never having used a hammer in his life. When he listened, really listened, to her speak about the struggles of people who looked like her, people the world often overlooked. When he kissed her, not like a man who wanted to own her, but like one who wanted to be worthy of her. One day, as they walked along the Brooklyn Bridge, the sun painting the sky in soft pinks and oranges, Xaden turned to her and asked, "Do you believe in fate?" She laughed. "I believe in choices." He took her hand, intertwining their fingers. "Then choose me." And just like that, her resistance began to fade. Before either of them realized it, they were everywhere together. Late-night dinners at small, tucked-away restaurants where they weren't Xaden Harrington, billionaire CEO, and Amara Patel, activist and scholar, but just two people finding solace in each other. Lazy Sunday mornings, tangled in bed, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare skin, whispering secrets neither had told anyone before. Midnight conversations on his penthouse balcony, where he confessed that, for all his success, he had never felt truly seen until her. He had always lived in a world of superficial connections, where people valued him for what he could offer. But with Amara, he felt real. And for Amara, who had spent her life believing love wasn't meant for people like her, not in the world of men like Xaden, it was terrifying how much she wanted to believe in him, how much she already did. "You make me want to be better," Xaden admitted one night, his voice barely above a whisper. They were lying in bed, her fingers absent-mindedly tracing his jawline, his arms wrapped protectively around her waist. Amara tilted her head, studying him. "You already are better." He exhaled a soft laugh. "Number I was, a man who never cared about anything beyond profit margins and the next big deal." She shook her head. "No, Xaden, that was the man the world expected you to be, but the man I see, he cares. He listens. He fights for things bigger than himself." For a long time, he just looked at her, as if trying to memorize the way she saw him. And then with a hushed breath, he said, "I love you." Amara froze, her heart slamming against her ribs. She had told herself she wouldn't fall for him, but love wasn't a choice. Not when it came to Xaden Harrington. Her lips parted, her voice softer than a whisper. "I love you, too." And just like that, she knew. There was no turning back. Love was supposed to be enough. But in Xaden and Amara's world, love was never that simple. Their passion was undeniable, their connection unbreakable, but the world around them, unforgiving, judgmental, cruel. The whispers started as soon as their relationship became public. It was at an exclusive charity event, where Amara arrived on Xaden's arm, elegant in a deep emerald gown, her brown skin glowing under the chandeliers. She looked like she belonged, yet the room made her feel otherwise. A group of elite women, the kind who had grown up expecting to marry men like Zayden, stood in a circle, their champagne flutes raised, their eyes full of quiet disdain. "Did you hear?" one of them murmured, loud enough for Amara to catch. "The Harrington heir has a new pet project." "Poor thing," another added with a feigned sigh. "She actually thinks he'll keep her." Amara felt the words cut through her, but she held her head high. She had spent a lifetime hearing worse. What she hadn't expected was for Zayden to hear them too. His jaw clenched as he turned to them, his voice sharp as glass. "I'd be careful with your words," he said coldly. "They reveal more about you than they do about her." The women fell silent, their fake smiles faltering. But the damage was done. The whispers had begun. It wasn't just the socialites. Business partners, investors, and even board members of Harrington Enterprises began expressing their concerns. "She doesn't fit the image of the company," one of them had muttered at a meeting. "It's about perception, Zayden," another had said. "A man of your status should be with someone more suitable." Zayden had slammed his glass onto the table. "Suitable?" His voice was dangerously low. "Define suitable." The man shifted uncomfortably. "You know what I mean." "Do I?" Zayden challenged. No one had the courage to say it outright. But he knew. Amara wasn't one of them. She wasn't a model, a socialite, or the daughter of a billionaire. She was a self-made woman, a scholar, an activist, and perhaps most unforgivable in their world, she was brown. It made Zayden furious, but more than that, it made him helpless, because no matter how powerful he was, he couldn't silence the world. The tabloids fed on the scandal. Self-made billionaire Zayden Harrington. Dating an activist? Is she the real deal or just another gold digger? Inside Amara Patel's rise to the top and why she's not good enough for Zayden Harrington. They dissected her background, her finances, her family, twisting facts, spinning lies. One headline read, "From community centers to luxury jets, how Amara Patel played the game and won." And another, "She calls herself a feminist, but is she just using feminism to trap a billionaire?" Amara had been strong. Her entire life she had fought battles, spoken out against injustice, stood against a world that tried to push her down. But this was personal. One night, as she scrolled through another hateful article, she finally broke. She turned to Zayden, her voice quiet. "Do you ever wish I was someone else?" His head snapped up. "What?" She swallowed hard, forcing herself to meet his eyes. "If I were different, if I came from your world, if I looked like them, would it be easier?" Zayden was silent for a moment. Then, with deliberate slowness, he walked toward her, cupping her face in his hands. "Never," he said, his voice firm, unwavering. "I don't want easier. I want you." For a second, Amara let herself believe him, but the doubt, the whispers, still lingered, and deep down she feared something neither of them wanted to admit. Love wasn't always enough. Love had once felt unbreakable. But in the world of power and wealth, even the strongest foundations could crumble under pressure. Zayden Harrington had spent his life building an empire. He had conquered boardrooms, mastered negotiations, and turned Harrington Enterprises into a billion-dollar powerhouse. He had faced competitors, market crashes, and lawsuits, but nothing like this. A financial scandal had erupted, shaking the very foundation of his company. Millions of dollars were unaccounted for. The media smelled blood. Investors were pulling out. Stock prices were plummeting, and whispers of fraud filled the air. It didn't matter that Zayden had nothing to do with it. He was the face of the company. And in the business world, perception was everything. "You need to fix this, Zayden," his CFO warned, "before the board forces you out." He had never felt this kind of pressure before. His empire, everything he had built, was slipping through his fingers, and the worst part? He had no one to turn to. Amara had always been his peace, his sanctuary, in a world of greed and deception. But now, he didn't know how to face her. She believed in him, believed in the good in him. But what if he wasn't the man she thought he was? What if, beneath all the wealth and charm, he was just as ruthless as the men who had once tried to destroy him? So he did what he had always done when things got bad. He shut down, stopped returning her calls, made excuses when she asked to see him. And when she showed up at his penthouse one night, concern written all over her face, he felt like a coward. "You're shutting me out," she said softly. "I just need time, Amara." His voice was distant, cold, her brows furrowed. "Zayden, I know you. You don't need time. You need someone to stand by you. Let me." For a second he almost gave in. But then he thought of the board meetings, the headlines, the way everyone around him already saw her as a liability. So he did the one thing he never imagined he would do. He let her go. "Not this time," he said, stepping back. "I can't do this right now." Amara's breath hitched, pain flashing in her eyes. But she didn't beg. She simply nodded, swallowing hard. And when she walked away, he told himself it was for the best. But deep down, he knew. He was breaking something he might never be able to fix. The people who had once judged him for being with Amara were suddenly all too eager to be by his side. "Just like old times," a voice purred beside him at the private club he hadn't stepped into since meeting Amara, Lena Whitmore. Blonde, beautiful, born into wealth, the kind of woman his world had always approved of. "You look like you need a drink," she murmured, sliding a glass of whiskey toward him. Zayden didn't refuse. He should have. He should have gone home, should have called Amara, should have fought for what they had. But instead, he sat there, drink after drink, letting the wrong people pull him further away from the one person who had ever truly seen him. And he had no idea that soon he'd make the biggest mistake of his life. Zayden Harrington had ruled the business world, but he had never felt this powerless. The weight of his crumbling empire, the whispers of doubt, the pressure of saving his company, it had all become too much. And instead of reaching for the one person who truly mattered, he drowned himself in whiskey, regret, and recklessness. And now, staring at the hotel room he didn't recognize, his heart plummeted as the consequences of his actions came crashing down. The executive retreat was supposed to be about damage control. Investors, board members, and industry leaders were all gathered at the exclusive Blackwood Resort, discussing the future of Harrington Enterprises. But all Zayden could hear were their doubts. "Your leadership is being questioned, Zayden. The stockholders are losing faith. Your relationship with her hasn't helped your image." He clenched his fists, rage boiling beneath the surface. They didn't have to say her name. He knew they were talking about Amara, and that was the moment he let his demons win. The private lounge was dimly lit, filled with the scent of expensive cigars and aged liquor. The glass of whiskey in Zayden's hand never seemed to empty, and neither did his thoughts. That was when she appeared. Celeste Vaughan, a socialite, heiress to an oil fortune, and a woman who had always wanted him. "Zayden," she purred, sliding into the seat beside him. "Rough night?" He barely acknowledged her, but she leaned in closer, her red lips curling into a smirk. "You shouldn't be so stressed," she murmured, placing a perfectly manicured hand on his arm. "Let me take your mind off things." He should have walked away. He should have remembered the way Amara's voice grounded him, the way her touch made him feel alive, not numb. But instead, he let the poison take over. The next thing he knew, his vision blurred, and the night spiraled into a black void of regret. The first thing he noticed was the blinding sunlight piercing through the curtains. The second was the perfume. Too strong, too familiar. The third? Celeste, lying beside him in an oversized hotel robe, sipping champagne like she had won a prize. Zayden bolted upright, his head pounding. His suit jacket was on the floor, his shirt unbuttoned, his heart slammed against his ribcage. "What the hell happened?" His voice was sharp, laced with panic. Celeste stretched lazily, amusement twinkling in her eyes. "You don't remember?" she asked, tilting her head. "Let's just say you needed a distraction, and I was happy to provide one." His stomach twisted in disgust. This was a mistake, a monumental, earth-shattering mistake. And then his phone buzzed. A flood of missed calls, a storm of text messages, and then the headline. Billionaire CEO Zayden Harrington spotted leaving Celeste Vaughan's hotel suite. Attached was a photo of him, leaving the hotel disheveled, undone, guilty. His entire world stopped. There was only one person on his mind: Amara. His hands trembled as he dialed her number, straight to voicemail. He tried again. And again. Nothing. Panic clawed at his chest as he sped to her apartment, praying, begging that she would listen to him. But when she opened the door, he knew it was already over. Her hazel eyes were glassy, her face unreadable, but the pain, the sheer heartbreak, was unmistakable. She had seen it. She had seen everything. "Amara," he breathed, stepping toward her, "it's not what you think." She let out a hollow laugh, shaking her head. "Then tell me what it is, Zayden." He opened his mouth, but what could he say? That he had been too weak, that he had let his insecurities ruin them, that he had given in to the world that never wanted her by his side. "I was drunk," he admitted, his voice breaking. "I made a mistake. I swear to you, it didn't mean anything." Amara's jaw tightened, her shoulders stiff. "Did it not mean anything to you?" she whispered, eyes filling with tears. "Because it meant everything to me." Zayden felt something inside him shatter. "I love you," he rasped. "Please don't walk away." She inhaled sharply, as if trying to hold herself together, as if trying not to break completely. Then, after what felt like an eternity, she took a step back. "No, Zayden," she whispered, "you already did." And just like that, she was gone. Zayden stood frozen, staring at the closed door, feeling the weight of his own destruction. And for the first time in his life, he realized all the power, all the money, all the success in the world meant nothing if he had lost her. Zayden had faced boardrooms filled with ruthless billionaires, had conquered industries with a single deal, and had built an empire from nothing. But standing in front of Amara's apartment door, he had never felt more afraid. The moment he saw the picture of him and Celeste, he hadn't stopped to think. He just ran. Through the city streets, past the flashing cameras and relentless reporters, until he was standing right here. His heartbeat pounded in his ears as he raised his fist and knocked. For a moment he thought she wouldn't answer. Then the door swung open. And there she was, Amara Patel, the only woman he had ever truly loved. Her beautiful brown skin glowed under the dim light, but her hazel eyes, Those eyes that once held warmth, passion, and trust were now cold. His chest tightened. She had already let him go. But he wasn't ready to let her go. Amara, he breathed. She didn't say anything, didn't invite him in, didn't look at him the way she used to. Zayden swallowed hard, his voice cracking as he spoke. It wasn't what it looked like. I was drunk. I wasn't thinking. I love you. Amara's expression didn't change. She just stared at him. And that silence? It hurt more than any words ever could. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was steady, but he could hear the hurt beneath it. Love isn't a drunken excuse, Zayden. He flinched. She took a step closer, and for a brief, foolish moment, he thought she was softening. But then her next words cut through him like a blade. You proved that. When the world whispered, you listened to them instead of me. Zayden shook his head, desperate to undo everything. No, I never cared about what they said. Then why? She whispered, her voice breaking. Why did you let them win? He had no answer, because the truth was, she was right. The world had told him she wasn't enough, that she didn't belong, that he needed someone else, and instead of proving them wrong, he had fallen right into their trap. Amara's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. I fought for us, Zayden, she whispered. I fought against the judgment, the hate, the stares. I stood by you when the world said I didn't belong at your side. Her voice trembled now, but she still held herself strong. But the moment things got hard, you ran into the arms of the woman they said was right for you. His throat closed. It wasn't true. It couldn't be true. But it was. And she knew it. Zayden reached for her hand, but she pulled away. The rejection burned. Amara, please, he whispered, his voice almost breaking. I can fix this. Tell me how to fix this. She smiled, a sad, broken smile. You can't. And with that, she took a deep breath, stepped back, and did the one thing he never thought she would. She closed the door, right in his face. Zayden stood there, staring at the door that had once led him to happiness. Now, it was just another wall between them, and this time, he was the one who built it. Zayden didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't accept what had just happened. But deep down, he knew. He had spent years building an empire, and in one reckless moment, he had destroyed the only thing that ever truly mattered. Zayden Harrington had built a kingdom. But now he stood in its ruins, and the worst part, he had no one to blame but himself. Since that night, since Amara closed the door on him, Zayden had become a ghost of himself. He had lost more than just a woman. He had lost the only real thing in his life. The guilt consumed him. He stopped drinking, poured out every bottle in his penthouse, smashed a whiskey glass against the marble floor just to feel something. But sobriety didn't erase the mistake. Nothing could, because Amara was gone, and she wasn't coming back. A week later, Celeste Vaughan waltzed into his office, her signature smirk in place. "Darling," she purred, "you look like hell." Zayden clenched his fists, barely holding back his rage. "I know what you did, Celeste." She let out a light, amused laugh, like this was all a joke to her. "And what exactly did I do?" "You set me up," Zayden said, his voice cold. "That dinner, the photos, it was all planned, wasn't it?" Celeste sighed dramatically. "Oh, Zayden," she mused, "you're so much more fun when you're not sulking. But yes, if you must know, I may have orchestrated a little situation." His jaw tightened. "You destroyed the one thing that mattered to me." She rolled her eyes. "No, sweetheart, you destroyed it. I just helped speed up the inevitable." Zayden exhaled sharply, fury boiling under his skin. "You will never have a place in my life, Celeste," he hissed. "Not as a lover, not as a friend, not as anything." For the first time her smirk faltered, and then he kicked her out, because he was done letting anyone dictate his life. But the damage was already done. Amara was gone, and now he had to learn to live with it. While Zayden was drowning in self-destruction, Amara was rebuilding herself. She buried herself in work, taking on bigger projects, becoming a powerful voice in advocacy and social justice. Her name was everywhere: articles, interviews. Amara Patel, breaking barriers in the business world. The woman who turned heartbreak into power. And she wasn't just surviving. She was thriving. The betrayal had hurt, it had shattered her, but she refused to be defined by Zayden's mistake. She had spent too long proving herself to the world. Now she was done proving anything to anyone. She was choosing herself. And for the first time in a long time, she was free. Zayden had everything and lost it all. Amara had lost everything and rebuilt herself stronger. But was this truly the end? Or was there still a chance for redemption? Because while Amara had moved forward, Zayden wasn't done fighting for her, and soon their paths would collide again. But this time, Amara held the power. Months passed. Zayden Harrington was no longer the man he used to be. But what did it matter when the one person who made him whole was gone? The world saw Zayden as a billionaire CEO, a man with power, influence and status, but behind closed doors. He was empty. No amount of business deals, no amount of success could fill the void Amara left. He had once been a man who took everything for granted. Now he woke up every day with regret clawing at his chest. Regret that he let her walk away. Regret that he didn't fight harder. Regret that his own weakness had cost him the love of his life. So he changed. Not for her, but because he refused to be the man who broke her ever again. Zayden cut out the toxicity in his life. He fired the executives who looked down on Amara. He donated millions to social justice causes she once spoke so passionately about. He publicly rejected Celeste Vaughan and her circle of privilege, refusing to be part of their elitist games. For the first time, he ran his company with integrity, not just profit. But none of it mattered. Not really, because every night he still reached for the other side of the bed, and every night it was empty. While Zayden was rebuilding himself, Amara was thriving. She had become a voice for women of color in business, fighting against the very racism and classism that once tried to push her down. Her name was respected. She was unstoppable. She didn't need Zayden Harrington, and maybe she never had. But Zayden, he needed her. And he wasn't done proving it, because this time he wouldn't just say he had changed. He would show her. One evening, as Amara left a powerful women's leadership event, she heard a voice behind her, a voice she never thought she'd hear again. Amara. Her breath caught. She turned, and there he was. Zayden Harrington, changed, humbled, a man standing before her, ready to fight for the love he lost. This is where redemption begins. Does Amara give him a chance, or has Zayden lost her forever? Fate was not done with them, no matter how much time had passed, no matter how much Amara had moved forward. The universe had other plans. Amara Patel walked into the grand ballroom with her head held high. She had been invited to speak at one of the most prestigious charity events of the year, an evening dedicated to funding opportunities for women of color in business. For Amara, this was more than just another speech. This was her purpose. She had worked tirelessly to carve a space in a world that once tried to shut her out. And now she was here to make sure others like her never felt the same. As she stepped onto the stage, she glanced at the sea of faces, business elites, philanthropists, media moguls, each waiting to hear what she had to say, and then her breath caught, because in the middle of the crowd, staring at her like she was the only thing in the room, was Zayden Harrington. Zayden never expected to see her. When he agreed to sponsor the event, it had been another step in his journey of redemption. He had no idea that Amara would be the keynote speaker. And yet, there she was, glowing, powerful, absolutely breathtaking. Seeing her again was like breathing after drowning, and as she took the stage, her voice, strong, unwavering, sent shockwaves through the room. She didn't need to read from notes. Her voice carried power, a truth that could not be ignored. For too long, people like me have been told we don't belong, that we aren't good enough for the elite boardrooms, the exclusive deals, the high-powered networks. But we are not here to ask for permission. We are here to take our rightful place. The audience was silent, hanging on to every word. Zayden felt it like a punch to the chest. We have been underestimated, overlooked, and told to stay in our lane. But let me tell you something, we define our own success. Applause erupted. Amara stood on that stage, unapologetic, radiant, and utterly untouchable. And in that moment, Zayden realized something devastatingly clear. She had moved on. She didn't need him, but God, he still needed her. As Amara stepped off the stage, she was greeted with applause, congratulations, admiration. But then she saw him. Zayden Harrington, standing near the entrance, his eyes locked onto hers like a silent plea. Her heart clenched. It was the first time they had been this close since the night she walked away. And now, the air between them was thick with unspoken words. Would she acknowledge him? Would she walk past as if he was nothing but a stranger, or was fate giving them one last chance? The room was silent. Every eye was on her. And in that moment, Amara Patel knew this was bigger than her pain, bigger than her heartbreak, bigger than Zayden Harrington. This was about every person who had ever been told they weren't enough. And she wasn't going to stay silent anymore. She stepped forward, her voice unwavering. We live in a world that tells us who we can love. A world that judges us by our skin, our background, our status, rather than our hearts, our integrity, our worth. The crowd was listening now. But we must choose to rise above, to break the chains of expectations that were never meant to define us. Amara's gaze flickered across the audience, her heart pounding, not from nerves but from conviction. Then her eyes landed on Zayden. He was watching her with something between awe and devastation, but she didn't waver. Love, true love, is not about the color of your skin. It's not about the number in your bank account. It's not about what society thinks is acceptable. She took a breath, then delivered the words that had burned inside her for too long. True love is about respect. It is about trust. It is about seeing beyond the surface and recognizing the soul standing before you. A murmur rippled through the audience. Some people shifted uncomfortably, others nodded, their expressions full of realization. But Amara didn't stop. For years, I was told I didn't belong in certain rooms, that I wasn't the right fit, that no matter how hard I worked, no matter how much I achieved, I would always be an outsider. Her voice grew stronger. But I stand before you today to say this. I define my own worth, Not society, not the color of my skin, not outdated ideals that try to dictate who I should be. A roar of applause erupted, but Amara wasn't done. Xaden felt every single word like a blade to his chest. She wasn't just talking to them, she was talking to him. To the man who failed her. To the man who let the whispers of the world cloud what they had. And now he wasn't sure if there was any way to fix what he had broken, but he had to try. As Amara stepped off the stage, the audience rose to their feet. Applause thundered around the room, but she barely heard it. Because in the crowd, Xaden was still standing there, waiting. Their eyes met. For a second, time stood still. Would she walk past him, or would she finally give him a chance to say the words he should have said long ago? This wasn't just about love anymore. This was about redemption. And the story wasn't over yet. The event was over. The applause had faded, and yet Amara's heart still raced. She had spent so long burying the past, believing that some wounds could never be healed. But now, he was standing in front of her, Xaden Harrington, the man who had shattered her heart, the man who had betrayed her trust, the man who, despite everything, had never left her soul. She had seen him in the audience, had felt the weight of his stare during her speech. But now, up close, it was different. He looked changed. The arrogance, gone. The invincible billionaire, now just a man standing before her, stripped of every illusion. And in his eyes, she saw something she never expected. Remorse. Humility. Love. "I know I don't deserve you," Xaden said, his voice softer than she had ever heard it, "but I need you to know I never stopped loving you." Amara's breath caught. She had dreamed of these words once. She had wanted them so badly. But now she wasn't sure if words were enough. She studied him, really studied him. His usual confident stance was replaced with something uncertain. He was waiting, not demanding, not expecting, just waiting for her to decide whether this was the end or the beginning of something new. "Words mean nothing without action, Xaden," she finally said, her voice steady. For a moment his expression faltered, but then he smiled, a soft, knowing smile. "Then let me prove it," he said. His voice was full of conviction, "not with words, not just for you, but for myself." Amara felt something stir deep inside her: hope, fear, love. She had told herself she was done with him. She had told herself he could never change. But looking at him now, what if she was wrong? What if, just this once, love deserved a second chance? She took a deep breath. This wasn't just about Xaden proving himself. This was about whether she was ready to let him. And so, as the night stretched before them, a single question remained. Would she take the risk, or walk away forever? And Xaden Harrington had finally understood that. He didn't try to win Amara back with grand gifts or empty promises. Instead, he worked, really worked, not just on getting her back, but on becoming the man she deserved. He poured himself into her world, not by intruding, but by uplifting. He invested in her community initiatives, ensuring that young entrepreneurs of color had access to funding and mentorship. He stepped back from superficial business partnerships, prioritizing ethical leadership over profit. He faced his demons, confronting the man he used to be and choosing to become someone better, not just for Amara, but for himself. And through it all, he never once asked for forgiveness, because he knew she had to see it for herself. Months later, on a quiet evening, fate brought them together once more. Under the same moonlit sky where their story had begun, Amara found herself standing before a different Zayden. Not the arrogant CEO, not the broken man filled with regret, but someone real. Someone who had fought for his redemption, someone who had learned what love truly meant. And this time, when he spoke, his voice was steady. "I don't expect anything, Amara. I just need you to know I love you. I have loved you every single day, even when I didn't deserve to." Her heart clenched, because this time she believed him. Amara took a step closer, searching his eyes. "I never needed your money, your name, or your world," she whispered. Her fingers trembled as she reached for his hands. "I only needed your heart to be true." Zayden exhaled, as if he had been holding his breath for months. His grip tightened around hers. And now, it is completely. This time, when they kissed, it wasn't reckless passion. It was love. Pure, strong, unshakable. As they walked away, hand in hand, the world watched. The whispers would always be there. The judgment, the stares, the expectations of a society that never believed in love beyond color, wealth, and status. But Amara no longer cared. She had rewritten the narrative. Not just for herself, but for every woman who had ever been told she wasn't enough. For every person who had been made to feel like they didn't belong. Love had won, and so had she. A powerful message to those who cheat on their wives. Love is a sacred promise, not a temporary convenience. When you marry a woman, you don't just take her hand, you take her dreams, her trust, and her soul. A woman who loves you truly doesn't just love your success, she loves the man behind it. She stands beside you in your struggles, believing in you when the world doubts you. She sacrifices her comfort, her desires, and sometimes even her own happiness for you. And yet, some men take this love for granted. They chase fleeting pleasures, not realizing the cost of their betrayal. They exchange a diamond for mere dust, only to regret it when it's too late. A cheating husband doesn't just break a vow, he shatters a heart that was once filled with love for him. He turns a home into a battlefield, a woman into a stranger, and love into pain. When a wife discovers betrayal, she doesn't just cry, she dies a little inside. She questions everything. Was I not enough? Did I deserve this? She stares at her reflection, wondering where she went wrong. But the truth is, it wasn't her mistake, it was yours. A man who cheats doesn't betray just his wife. He betrays himself. He loses the one person who would have stood by him till the end. He trades warmth for emptiness, love for guilt, and loyalty for regret. And regret is the heaviest burden a man can carry. Because one day he will wake up in an empty bed, missing the scent of the woman he pushed away. He will look at his phone, wishing he could text her, but knowing she won't reply. He will sit at the dinner table, but the laughter will be gone. He will come home to silence, realizing he destroyed the only true home he ever had. His children will look at him differently, seeing not a hero, but a man who hurt their mother. He will crave the warmth of her arms, the comfort of her voice, but she won't be there. And the worst pain? Knowing he can never undo the past. If only he had cherished what he had before it was too late. A wife doesn't ask for riches. She asks for love, respect, and honesty. She doesn't expect perfection. She expects loyalty. She understands your struggles, but she cannot understand your betrayal. She forgives your flaws, but she cannot forgive the moment you stopped choosing her. Betrayal doesn't just destroy a marriage, it destroys a soul. It turns love into doubt, trust into fear, and dreams into nightmares. And in the end, the biggest loser is not the betrayed, but the betrayer. Because a woman will heal, but a man will live with the knowledge that he lost the one who truly loved him. So, to every man tempted to cheat, think before you break a heart that beats for you. Think before you destroy a love that is rare and pure. Think before you trade eternity for a moment of lust. Because once a good woman walks away, she never looks back. And once love is broken, no amount of regret can piece it back together. Protect your home. Protect your love. A faithful man is the richest man in the world, because he has something money can never buy, a love that lasts forever. Infidelity isn't just a mistake, it's a choice to betray, to hurt, and to destroy something beautiful. A wife gives her heart completely, trusting that her love will be enough. But when that trust is shattered, she's left with a wound that may never fully heal. She lies awake at night, questioning if the love was ever real. She wonders if every "I love you" was just a lie. She replays every moment in her mind, searching for the signs she missed. She wonders if she wasn't beautiful enough, smart enough, or good enough. But the truth is, she was more than enough. You just failed to see it. A woman doesn't break overnight. Betrayal slowly eats away at her soul. She hides her pain behind a smile, pretending she's fine. But inside she's drowning in heartbreak, gasping for air. She cries in silence, wiping away tears no one sees. And when she finally finds the strength to walk away, it's not because she stopped loving you. It's because she finally started loving herself. A man who cheats loses more than just a woman. He loses the one person who truly cared. He loses the one who prayed for him, fought for him, believed in him. He loses the arms that held him when he was weak. He loses the voice that comforted him in his darkest days, and one day he will sit alone, staring at old photos, wishing he could turn back time. But time doesn't wait for regret. The wife he betrayed will move on, finding someone who cherishes her, and he will realize too late that loyalty was the greatest gift he could have given. What is love without trust? What is a home without loyalty? A man who cannot stay loyal is a man who doesn't deserve love. A true man doesn't chase after temporary pleasures. A true man protects, values, and honors his wife. He doesn't trade commitment for lust. He doesn't gamble with the heart of the woman who stood by his side. A moment of betrayal can destroy a lifetime of love. And no matter how many times you say, "I'm sorry," some wounds never heal. The pain of betrayal lingers in a woman's soul, even long after she has forgiven, because betrayal isn't just about cheating. It's about breaking the one person who trusted you the most. It's about making her feel like she wasn't enough, when in reality, you were the one who wasn't worthy of her. A woman doesn't need a perfect man. She needs an honest one. Someone who chooses her every single day, not just when it's convenient. Someone who understands that love is not about finding someone better. It's about choosing the same person again and again, through every storm. Loyalty is rare, and once broken, it can never be fully restored. A man may move on quickly, but deep inside he will always feel the emptiness of what he lost. A cheating husband may think he has won, but in reality, he has lost everything. Because nothing, no amount of wealth or pleasure, can replace the warmth of a faithful woman's love. Love is not just a word, it's a responsibility. You don't just say, "I love you." You prove it every single day. You stay loyal, not because you have no other choices, but because you have already made the best one. To every man who thinks he can cheat and still keep his family, you are playing with fire, and fire always burns. One day, you will watch the woman you once called yours walk away, and you will realize that you were never her biggest heartbreak. You were your own. Because no man who betrays a loyal wife ever truly finds happiness. He may enjoy temporary pleasure, but deep inside, he will always feel the void of what he lost. One day, he will see her happy with another man, a man who won't make the same mistake he did, and the pain of regret will be his only company. So, before you cheat, think, is one moment of pleasure worth a lifetime of regret? Is it worth losing the woman who would have stood by you through every storm? Don't let your foolishness destroy the greatest blessing in your life. Be a man of integrity, not a man of regret. If you love her, respect her. If you cherish her, stay loyal. If you don't want to lose her, don't give her a reason to leave. A wife's love is a treasure. Cherish it before it's too late, because once she's gone, no amount of begging will bring her back, and you will have no one to blame but yourself. True love isn't just about staying together, it's about staying faithful. A real man doesn't search for new women. He builds a stronger bond with the one he already has. Love isn't about finding someone better. It's about making sure no one else could ever replace the love you have. Loyalty is the foundation of every happy home. When trust is broken, love starts to die. A wife's tears are not just water, they are pieces of her soul breaking apart. When she cries because of betrayal, a part of her love for you fades away. And one day, there won't be any love left to save. If you are tempted to cheat, ask yourself, would you want your wife to feel the pain you are about to cause? If the answer is no, then walk away from temptation before it destroys everything. Your wife is not your second option, your backup plan, or someone you can take for granted. She's your heart. Protect her, love her, stay true to her. Be the man she fell in love with, not the man who broke her. The greatest love stories are built on trust, not betrayal. You don't need to be rich to be a good husband. Just be honest, faithful, and kind. A woman who truly loves you will stay by your side through every hardship, but she will not stay with a man who doesn't respect her. If you destroy a good woman, don't be surprised when she stops loving you. A loyal wife doesn't ask for much. Just your honesty, your love, and your commitment. Marriage is not just about happiness. It's about fighting for each other, even in the darkest moments. When you choose to cheat, you choose to walk away from something priceless. Don't wait until you lose everything to realize what you had. The woman who stood by you when you had nothing deserves to be cherished when you have everything. The best men are not the richest men, but the most faithful ones. In the end, love is not about passion or desire. It's about loyalty, trust, and choosing each other every single day. So to every man tempted to betray his wife, think of her love, her sacrifice, and her tears. And ask yourself, is it worth breaking a heart that beats only for you? Be the man she deserves. Stay loyal. Stay true. Love her the way she loves you.